Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to a new episode of Canadian Investing in the USA with Glenn Sutherland. This week, my guest is Rich Monroe, which was on a show earlier. I should have got the episode number, but anyway, if you are looking for it, just search Rich Monroe on my channel and you can find it. I forgot to look up the episode number. Rich, you want to give everybody a bit of an intro to yourself, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely, Glenn. Thanks so much for having me back. I am based in Atlanta, Georgia. My core focus is short-term rentals and Airbnbs. I've been in real estate a little over 20 years, and I've done everything from single-family, multifamily, and now delving into hotels.
Awesome. So, there's a lot there. So you talk about short-term rentals, all this stuff. Do you primarily focus on investing in Atlanta, or do you go in other places as well?
Yeah, predominantly I'm in the southeast, so we've got properties that we invest in the Tampa, Florida market, so Central Florida. We're also looking in the northern Georgia mountains, as well as North Carolina and Tennessee, so kind of all over the southeast.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so let's dive into it. So, what have you, what are you currently working on? What's the main focus? Because you just talked about a whole bunch of different techniques and different asset classes.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely kind of evolved in my real estate career over the years. I've done, tax lien investing, buying properties through tax liens. I've done a lot of fix and flips, done some higher end luxury rehabs up on the lake here in Georgia on Lake Lanier. And it was about 10 years ago that I kind of shifted and only focused predominantly on doing short-term rentals, as I mentioned, as the outcome or strategy. So I do have three different strategies. I do buy properties, distress, fix them up. I also do what's called the rental arbitrage model or lease properties. And then I can also manage properties for other investors. The typical management fee in short-term rentals is around 25% of the gross rental income. And so it's just good to have multiple revenue streams. And so my current focus right now in recognizing the options, I can go build a fund and go buy a bunch of single family houses and, for the purpose of doing short-term rentals. And usually in today's environment, you're going to need to be in the 450 to 500,000 per property range to have it make sense. And one of the reasons I've kind of shifted over to the hotel space is because there are you're not restricted based on appraised values, right? So it's based on the net operating income of that asset. And you can buy something very distressed, do some remodeling and rehabbing and definitely make a huge increase in your rental revenue. And as a result, a huge increase in the value. And so if I'm going to focus my time and efforts in investing and fixing up distressed properties, the time is better spent, in my opinion, in the commercial or hotel space and kind of creating the boutique hotel experiences. There's a lot of mom and pop owners in the hotel space that are ready to retire,
Yeah.
haven't not necessarily taken advantage of some of the recent technologies with a lot of the different platforms that are available and self check-ins and things of that nature to kind of, decrease your expenses. And so that's kind of my main focus right now. We've got a property in North Georgia we're about to put under contract. It's 104 rooms. It's a cabin resort. With individual cabins as well as standalone buildings,
Mhm.
and also has wedding venue, spa, restaurant, and kind of horseback riding on property as well. So that's just one example of some of the projects we're currently looking at.
That's an interesting idea with all this. So, when you're doing like one of these hotels, you're going to do it the exact same as if you were doing an Airbnb. Like it's going to go on Airbnb, or are you going to try and sell it more like as a hotel?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Obviously, I've had experience with hospitality in the short-term rental space. The hotel space is definitely a little bit different. There are some additional things you have to think about and employ and different platforms to place on. Airbnb is definitely still one that you want to go to with hotels, especially since some of the older school players haven't really necessarily done that.
Yeah.
So there's a huge opportunity and a big lift just for that alone. But your traditional sites for hotels are still going to be, your Travelocity, Expedia, Booking.com, as well as Google.
Yeah. So do you need like a license in order if it's like considered a hotel versus like being like an Airbnb?
You do typically need a license in most cities and counties. You know, fortunately, some of the northern Georgia counties don't necessarily have too many sophisticated zoning requirements, and so. But if you're in, major cities like Atlanta, for example, you are going to have a hotel license that's required. That's another benefit in looking at this model over short-term rentals is, as you guys probably know, it's a highly regulated environment where a lot of the major cities, including Atlanta, are trying to, if not limit it to investors, not being investor friendly, but also capping a cap on how many units you can get. So you can step into environments like that and basically be successful with the hotel model by, going into something that's already got a licensing structure. New York is a good example of that. They shut down thousands and thousands of listings just last year. Orlando is another example where Kissimmee has 17,000 listings because you can't do it in Orlando. But it creates an environment where, if you're looking at it from a hotel perspective, it definitely creates more opportunities in those types of highly restricted areas.
Interesting. And like just compared to, a lot of people when they think about an Airbnb, they think about like, hey, this is something that I could do myself. It doesn't seem like that big of a stretch. But, managing a hotel, you're now managing laundry and cleaning service and front desk and probably like a million other things because I'm not familiar with that sort of industry. Like, is this something that like someone could just jump into or like, should you have some sort of prerequisites before you tackle buying a hotel?
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, those of us that are real estate investors and are kind of navigating all the different options, I would highly encourage partnering with other folks that are already experienced in that space. Even though I've got a lot of vacation rental, short-term rental experience, I'm still choosing to align myself with partners that have recent experience in the hotel space and operations. And I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. So yes, there are some things that you have to kind of be aware of, and you don't want to learn the hard way and end up being in trouble. And so, I've had multifamily buildings, 30 unit buildings over the years that we've converted over to short-term rental from long-term, all one-bedroom units in one standalone building. So it's very similar to a hotel. So
Yeah.
I've kind of got a good starting point with that. And even though I could probably figure it out on my own, I'm still going the route of aligning myself and strategically partnering with other folks that have more direct experience, especially when I'm looking at a large project like 104 rooms.
Yeah, totally agree. I totally agree. Every time I went to do something that wasn't something I was familiar with, I'd usually partner with somebody, hire a coach, and expedite the whole process instead of trying to figure this out and making a pile of mistakes, and
Absolutely.
losing somebody else's money, which is not what anybody wants.
Right.
So you just mentioned that, you did some multifamily, as well as the hotel. What kind of, similarities and differences would you find from just buying a 30 unit hotel or a 30 unit apartment building? Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I just wanted to let you know that I've created a new coaching program. I believe the new coaching program has way more value than any of the programs that have even existed in the past. What we've done is pre-recorded all the lessons so that you can work through it at your own pace, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to meet up on a regular basis to answer the questions, do deal analysis, and actually spend our time together working on things instead of spending our time learning things. I think this will make a seamless transition to buying in the United States and will help you solve a lot of your problems. If this is of interest to you, go to glensutherland.com/coaching. I hope to help you guys invest in the United States, and I hope we provide as much value as possible. Back to the podcast.
Yeah, great question. And so, we talked about the regulatory environment, and unfortunately, multifamily typically doesn't get the same benefit that a hotel would in terms of short-term rentals being an acceptable use of purpose of use for business. And so, even in Atlanta, with the recent regulations, we're currently still negotiating with Atlanta right now, actually, to finalize the final ordinance. They are going to be putting caps on multifamily buildings, probably anywhere from 10 to 15%. So if I own a 30 unit building, all of a sudden now, and I want to, short-term rentals is 2 to 3 times the revenue as a long-term rental, I'm now restricted where legally I can't run the whole building as a short-term rental. I can only do it on a certain percentage. And so that's one of the disadvantages, obviously, for multifamily. Now,
Hmm.
multifamily does lend itself a little bit more towards the Airbnb model, with the full kitchen, a lot more, with the local neighborhood feel and less like a hotel. And so there are those advantages in the areas that you're not really going to have a regulatory requirement, but you will be facing restrictions if you're in multifamily that most of the time you're going to have to be relying on the long-term rental model as your exit with it.
Yeah. And say you were doing this, would it be an advantage to like pick like sorry, maybe I'll reframe that question. If you're doing like a hotel, would it make sense to try and pick a market where Airbnb was outlawed or there was regulations against it? That's where my head's going because like it could be an advantage in those sort basically the government stepped in and blocked your competition.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's going to give you, a bigger lift on your occupancy. And so from a strategic standpoint, that definitely is, a good investment model to kind of look at some of those areas that are highly restricted, and look at a hotel operation because you're going to potentially get an upper hand on increased demand and less supply in that market.
And like so when you're looking at one of these hotels to buy it, um how do you know this is going to work out? The reason I'm bringing this up is I just went back in October. I went to a Detroit Red Wings game, and then I allowed my brother to be in charge of booking the hotel, and he picked like the cheapest one. And as I was in there, because I'm always like looking at real estate, anytime I'm around anything, and I'm going, I can't imagine owning this. Like just
Yeah,
the the clientele hanging out outside. Like
yeah,
I strategically parked my truck at the front door so I could see it. Like I
yeah.
was just like, I can't imagine owning that. Is there like what kind of stuff are you looking for when you're buying these, just to make sure you're not gonna get yourself in trouble?
Yeah, no, so obviously a lot of what we are currently going after is kind of the more experienced income to higher type traveler that can afford looking at locations that create more of an experience. And so those boutique hotels, so strategically you're going to be looking at those types of properties. Now, I do think, and we also have an initiative that we're looking at some of the hotels you're describing, the Motel 6 types, right? And that are kind of at the bottom of the market. You've got a lot of transient folks, people that are traveling, that are driving. They're only there for a night, and they're going to pay, $60 or $70 a night. There is an interesting angle that we're looking at in that market and those types of assets, in that we can create an opportunity where we come in and acquire a very distressed hotel that could potentially be vacant, that's in that type of market, and basically do some very simple upgrades and make it more modern, and essentially create a competitive environment in that space to where we might be able to command, instead of $60 a night, it's 85 or $90 a night. We're also doing an interesting investment strategy where we're making that available as a hotel condo conversion for individual investors that would like to invest. And so now they can also participate usually in the 60 to 70,000 per unit range, and acquire, individual rooms. And, we can manage the process for them, or they can self-manage. But that's another model that we're looking at. We're working with a group that's got a lot of experience with this. They've already done 4 or 5 different properties, exactly what I just described. And we're kind of expanding into the Atlanta metro area with that model. So it's usually going to be about 120 units. And it's that exact clientele that you described, but creating an alternative product to them that is currently not available in that space.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You almost want to change the name of the building too at the same time, rebrand it, right? Um,
Yes.
you mentioned for the other ones that you're creating an experience, and I've seen people do all kinds of experiences with the Airbnb and all kinds of all millions of different things they've tried there. How do you create an experience with a hotel? I have more free content. So if you're interested, I created a PDF guide and a video to go along with the PDF guide to complement it. And what the guide is all about is the 5 most common mistakes that Canadians make when investing in the United States. So if you're interested in this free guide, go to Canadian Investing in the USA.com/mistakes. And let's go back to the podcast. And it's free.
Yeah, so usually, and that's one of the things in our acquisitions scope that we're typically looking for. I'm less interested in the, 30, 40 unit building that's got limited parking, limited outdoor space. We're looking more at, opportunities to create, swimming pool areas, fire pits, pickleball, outdoor areas that allow you to create those environments that people want to hang out in, and have the ability to do different events like yoga and water polo and things like that. And so it becomes when you actually book your room, you can look at the different activities that are available at the location and be able to kind of book other options while you're staying there as well.
That makes sense. And this just popped in my head too. Like, I've seen like some of the hotels or motels or whatever I've stayed at, and they have like a tennis court or whatever. And if it's just sitting there vacant, and I'm always like, man, just walk right by it. But if someone else is on it using it, and I'm like, oh, we should play some tennis. You also have to have somebody like just go use it a little bit here and there. So like, oh, that looks fun. Looks like a good idea.
Exactly.
Yeah, they actually go use it, right? No, that's awesome. What else should I have asked you about doing a motel? I'm still I've never done a motel myself. I or hotel. I love the idea, especially as the if you were into the short-term rental and the hospitality sort of market. I feel like it's the next step up, right? Just to scale it, right? What should I have asked you? What other things? Was there anything I should know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things, right? I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces, right? So I've done a lot of fix and flip deals, single family. They're usually pretty straightforward. You do your rehab estimate, you figure out the appraised value, and you make sure that you're buying it at a price that fits within, usually 70% of ARV. Acquiring a hotel is not much different than that. You have in simple terms, you have the same analysis, understanding what the current value is, what kind of rehab you need to do, what that's going to cost, and then potentially, what your after repair value is going to look like, as well as your increased revenue once you've done your improvements. And so from a basic standpoint, it's very similar in terms of what's involved there, but you've got a lot more moving pieces when it comes to hotels that are typically going to be very heavy with the zoning and permitting requirements. Your rehab is not going to be as simple as a single family residence. There's a lot of different requirements in commercial that you're going to need to be knowledgeable about and work with contractors that can give you accurate quotes. For example, especially if you're looking at assets that are built originally in the 70s and 80s, you're most definitely going to have to redo electrical and plumbing in most cases. And you're also going to need to be doing additional things with sheetrock that you wouldn't typically do with a single family rehab. So you've really got to educate yourself on the differences there when it comes to doing that with commercial properties. The due diligence periods are typically much longer because you're going to need time to do your inspections, especially if it's a property that's spread out and kind of a large resort style. And then you're also going to need that time to do your research on the zoning requirements as well and what's involved there. And so, you're still going to have those unexpected contingencies as you would in single family rehabs.
Yeah.
It's just going to be amplified with commercial. And so, I would recommend that's going to be a big part of it. Another obvious big part about it, which is also similar in single family and especially in the Southeast now, you need to understand what the insurance costs are going to be and property taxes. In a lot of different states and regions, those have been increased by 20, 30% over the last couple of years. So you can't really rely on the seller's financials and historical data when you're doing your review and your market analysis to understand what the costs are going to be. So you're going to really need to partner yourself with commercial insurance folks and get a good understanding of what those costs are going to look like going forward to make sure you're factoring that into your numbers.
Yeah. And as you talking, my mind was wandering. A lot of times I'm looking at multifamily buildings that have gotten into distress. It comes down to like the property management and how they've been running it. I'm just thinking about all the staff that are involved in running a hotel. When you purchase one of these, have you found that that's kind of the issue? It could be the staff that's holding the building back.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's one of the first things we look at, obviously, the as an example, this opportunity we're looking at in North Georgia, it's been family owned for the past 40 years, and they've constantly been doing upgrades and additions, and this is an ongoing project. So as a result of that, they have about 8 contractors kind of on full staff, and they're constantly moving around doing things that once you come in and make your initial assessment is really not going to be necessary once we do our initial remodel, right? So that's a whole expense that they've been burdened with that can go away. There's other things like front desks. That's typically if you're going to do a self-check-in model, you can do away with that expense. In a lot of cases, these operators are living on site and on the property, so you've got potentially additional rooms or spaces that you can create as revenue generators. And so there's a lot of different things you can kind of step into it right away and make those improvements to the bottom line to increase your value just by making some of those tweaks in the beginning.
That makes a lot of sense. Rich, tons of information here. Someone's like, "Hey, how do I learn more about this, Rich? If I want to invest with you, I want to learn, where do I go? Where do I learn more?"
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a podcast as well. It's called B&B Investing. It's also a Facebook group called B&B Investing Group. And so you can join my Facebook group. And usually we do some updates and some tours there on any of the properties that we're looking at. So you can kind of stay up to date. And you can also, find me on Facebook Messenger under Rich Monroe, and it's Munroe. And, I'm happy to provide, my full contact information we could put down in the comments as well.
Awesome. Well, Rich, this was honestly, I think your last one was good, but I think we beat it. Like this one had a ton of information. I think the people who listen to this are gonna go, you know what, this hotel thing this might actually be something that I'm interested in. So anyway, I love when I have these podcasts. I have a lot of information, a lot of meat on the bone. So anyway, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing all this with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And I look forward to coming back again. And hopefully we can have another update on what's going on with some of these projects.
Yeah, you talked about like 10 different strategies. We could probably even go on a bunch of different directions. So I love
Most
it.
definitely.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Glenn.
That was a nice video. Bye.